Good afternoon. I've had an occasion to share with friends that the period of time immediately following abiding awakening, the permanent awakening, the period of time, I sincerely believe that I'm reluctant to use that word believe because beliefs most times end up to be limiting. So I'm looking for another word for belief. How about this? I have a tendency to accept the idea that the awakening experience is the same for each of us. And what makes it unique is ourselves. So we have this universal experience of commonality. Yet, each of us will struggle, because indeed it is a struggle, to try to share not only what this means, but the stages, the progression, what happens consequently to this event. And again, what makes it unique is that each of us does our best to struggle to express it. In that sense, it becomes our unique experience because we each frame it in different ways. So it's like in the eye of the beholder. We could all witness the same event and report it differently. So I knew that I was struggling within my limitations. How did I express? Because I found the need to share was real. And it became obvious to me that you awaken into your Buddhahood. But also you experience over time the maturation. You grow up, become a mature Buddha. And the only way that I could, the commonality, searching for commonalities in the hopes that I could put experience to words. And I had to go way back to reach this commonality, way back to my birth. And I've shared that I felt as if I was an infant. And I did feel abandoned, so abandoned infant. And I found myself on a cold, dirty, hard sidewalk. No other immediate signs of life around me. So there I was, if you could imagine taking a newborn, putting the newborn on a cold, damp, hard sidewalk, a filthy sidewalk, with no other signs of life readily apparent. And this is the condition that I found myself. This is the only way that I could express it. And again, I had to go way back. But I never really experienced this before because there was someone who nurtured me from the very beginning. So to stretch your imagination, imagine being born and then unceremoniously, as if dumped, thrown out, abandoned. Because these are, if I could pin any feelings to this state, to this experience, it would be one of abandonment. Suddenly finding myself totally alone and helpless. To fend for myself. And only recently listening to, and this has been something that was my chosen means from the very beginning to express what happened to me. But I had no reference points. I'd never heard of anybody else talking about immediate aftermath of enlightenment. I was led to believe that it would be a state of bliss, that I could hear the harps of heaven and the angels' voices and great halls filled with Buddhas accepting me, welcoming me into the fold. This is what I had imagined. The trumpet, dun, 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 introducing in this corner in the golden shorts is the newest addition to the troops of Buddhas. And what I found couldn't be more different. So here I am, a newborn, discarded, abandoned, in a damp, wet, hard, lifeless place. And the shock. This was unlike my imagination. This was a shocking occurrence, as you could only imagine. And recently, again, I have no framework, no previous information from other people that have about their experience that I had never heard anything. They take you to the edge, to the precipice, tell you to jump, your teacher, your guru, your guide, tell you to jump. You make a leap of faith after the abandonment of fear, only to end up as a helpless babe on a sidewalk, totally, utterly alone. I've always known the difference between lonely and aloneness. Aloneness is something that I often choose, and seldom do I experience loneliness. But this was the ultimate experience of loneliness. because there was not a shred of the infrastructure, the support that makes our experience of aloneness tolerable. We have electricity, the food's in the other room, I have water, I can break the aloneness period anytime. In today's world, of course, it's much easier. Just a simple email, or better yet, a text message. Just reach out. But in this circumstance, so again, I wasn't aware of anyone sharing any similar experience. In just 2 days, checking out Adya Shanti. And if you don't know Adya, if you haven't seen his videos, I highly recommend him, along with Sadhguru. These are the two that have most resonated with me, the two teachers readily available on the internet, on YouTube. Again, Adya Shanti. He was sharing what a teacher had told him. And he received his training in a strict Zen tradition. And one of his teachers referred to previous expressions of the baby Buddha, and mentioned a baby Buddha is no less a Buddha than a mature Buddha. Just as a baby is no less a human being, despite his or her weaknesses, despite their newness in the world. Born into a world as a full human being after the permanent awakening. You're born into the world as a fully functioning Buddha. But that didn't comfort me much, and it didn't even dawn on me in this condition that I found myself. But what has been helpful is that other people shared, and to see a linkage to a commonality, to the previous experiences of others. It's not necessary to validate, because I certainly needed no validation. It is what it is. And when it's happening, there's no deniability. Such is the immensity of this occurrence. So it wasn't that it felt good to be validated. It just was nice to hear someone else talk about a baby Buddha, and understanding, with the understanding particularly that was helpful, is there may have been a tradition of this. Others have used similar ways to describe this universal experience. And in that first 6 months, I've mentioned just recently 2 occurrences that perhaps are unavoidable. At least it was unavoidable for me. And with 2020 hindsight, I wouldn't go back and change. What happened was what happened. But the first thing in the first 6 months was the excitement to share. This is such a monumental, such a huge experience. Life altering doesn't even begin to define this occurrence. Words fail me to really captured the significance of this occurrence. And the fact that it lasted for 2 days, that I was sitting in a chair for most of 2 days without even considering water or food or the restroom. The needs of my physical body, other than a beating heart, blood to the brain, and breathing. I had very little use of the physical shell. So if you could imagine that the immensity, and it's only natural to share. Well, it took me weeks to even get a voice back where I could begin to verbalize again. Those few weeks right after. It happened on a Friday, it happened on a weekend. I went back to work on Monday, teaching at the university, able to function, but still overwhelmed by the experience. So after the course of a few days, maybe weeks, I began to share with those closest to me. And the immediate response was joyful, happy for me. But that was followed, not exactly immediately, but I don't know how much time passed when doubt. Could that really have happened to him? Why him, not me? A lot of this. But again, a wise counsel would be not to share this experience, particularly immediately. So this urge to share, weeks, it took maybe months till I started developing a spiritual ego. When I felt better, I felt like I'd accomplished something, I felt superior to others. And my ego had come back in full glory, not only in full glory, but cloaked in robes of gold. A saintly ego, this spiritual ego. And again, I had no forewarning of this. And it took the next couple of years to put this to rest. In fact, this was more work than accepting the fragility, the maya, the illusory nature of my self-constructed ego. This was ego let loose, ego on a grand scale. And since this time, I've had occasion to read or listen to people speaking of just this occurrence. But it's so insidious because it's cloaked in robes of gold, as I said. But it included judgment. So this was in and of itself, it was no less easy than the awakening experience, challenges. And I believe that many people don't get past this. And it's a trap. It can take years, if not lifetimes, to work this out, to recognize. But the key is, if you catch yourself judging, if you're rating, if you're categorizing, if there's a higher and a lower hierarchy, you're in deep doo-doo. You're in trouble. You need to catch yourself first. And I've talked about sideways, side eyes. And rather than seeing yourself head on, you need to look at the side of your eyes, get glimpses. Anyway, whatever it takes. And be prepared for yet another struggle to battle this spiritual ego. So that kept me busy for the first couple years. And then I started understanding what I've called Buddha years. As a Buddha, fortunately, you mature much more quickly than we do as in the physical form. Thank the Almighty for this. But what I came to learn just as a dog year allegedly is 7 human years. For every year your pet lives, it's the equivalent of living 7 years as a human. Now, where this thinking, where this measurement, where this concept came from, I'm not sure. But it lent itself well. And for some reason, I thought Buddha years are a little faster than cat and dog pet years. So I settled on 8 years. At the end of the first year, I was 8. Now in a human being, they say that your brain, the cognition, that your brain is developing its ability through 9 years old. And then you've reached the limit of what you can learn. Now it's time for the nuances. Second year, 8 to 16. Sweet 16. Innocence, but growing wisdom, enough wisdom to look beyond, to accept the exciting prospect of continual growth. Now, what I'm sharing with you, I've never had an occasion to hear anyone or read anything speaking to this. When Adyashanti's baby Buddha, he talked about you're born a Buddha, but the maturation, you grow in your Buddhahood. You don't grow into it, you already are it. But you grow in your sophistication, in your wisdom, in your experience. So for me, it will be 6 years this coming May 1st, 2nd, and a little bit of the 3rd. 6 years, 6 times 8, if I remember my times table, 48. So in my Buddhahood, I'm in my 48th year. Who knows how many more years I have in my physical form. But I can look forward to continued growth. So if I can reach my 20th anniversary of my awakening experience, I'd be the equivalent of a 100-year-old Buddha. I cherish that and look forward to it, with the caveat that if my physical journey ended tomorrow instead of 20 years from now, that it would matter not. So I'm not vested in these years that we measure, the accumulation of years. I'm not vested in that. I'm totally at ease in the moment, with the full understanding that's all there is. When we talk about linear time, and measurement of years is certainly a good example of our attempt to put labels, to put definitions on the undefinable. The moment becomes definitive. The moment contains past, present, and future. I was watching something. I'm really interested in the cosmic scale. I was watching something about time. Time is relative to the observer. Light that reaches us from our nearest star, other than our sun, Alpha Centauri, takes 4 light years. So what we're seeing is the past. It's the present now. I'm observing the past. Just as the past is sending its waves at the speed of light, so too is the future. So now science is catching up with the old spiritual wisdom about past, present, and future are all happening at the same time. Now, if it's really important to us, and it's not too important to me, but if it was important, I'm sure I could cultivate some ability to experience the past, future, and the present at the same time, without short-circuiting, without being overwhelmed. But what I've come to understand, and what I rest secure in, is that the moment is the encapsulation of past, present, and future. And unlike cultivating some special ability to consciously experience past, present, and future at the same time, it's infinitely more simple to embrace the moment, understanding, with the full understanding of what the moment is. And that the moment is all there is. Now, you might think this a limitation, because what about past experiences, past achievement, future goals, future dreams? Is that rendered mute? Does that have no consequence? Does it have no value? I leave that to you. But I do know that the moment, as small as it may seem to some of you, is immense, because it contains all that there is, was, and will be. On a cosmic scale, the world writ large, or the world writ small. Both of these conditions, by the way, both of these aspects are so appealing to me. I love to contemplate the infinitely small, as I love to contemplate the infinitely large. I see this mimicked in the act of breathing in and breathing out. Bringing the large in, utilizing it for oxygen to fulfill the needs of my body. Breathing it out, expelling the carbon dioxide that my body doesn't need, but other life forms, plants, need what's poison to me. And in this play, in the beauty of nothing is wasted, everything is with a purpose. It's just that we tend to be so self-centered that if it doesn't fit our purpose, it's poison or not useful, to be avoided at any cost. But I suggest that you embrace, that we recognize the miracle of ordinariness, that we cultivate forgiveness for ourselves and others.